Okay, we're doing this first. This episode of One Hit Wonderland is brought to you by Skillshare. Now, people sometimes ask me, Todd, how do I become a YouTuber? And I tell them, don't do that. God, it's awful. But that's because I have absolutely no background in any of this, and I had to learn everything the hard way. If you would like to know how to make videos without fumbling around cluelessly like I did for 6 years, you should check out Skillshare, an online learning community for creatives, which I guess I am technically. It's less than $10 a month for an annual subscription, and you can learn everything you need to for film production, or producing music if that's why you watch me, or one of their thousands of other classes on subjects like creative writing, or web development, photography, or how to freelance, which is what I do. Like, here's one that interests me. Bookkeeping for Freelancers, How to Handle Your Finances by Emily Simcox. Learn how to track your expenses and stay organized. I should probably look into that one because my finances right now are just... well, I'm not going to get into it. Just whatever you're into. Pick up new skills, improve the old ones, learn to make what you want to make. The first 1,000 of my subscribers who click the link in the description will get a 2-month free trial of premium membership so you can explore your creativity. All right, thank you. And on with the show. Welcome back to One Hit Wonderland, where we take a look at bands and artists known for only one song. You know, I haven't done an 80s new wave song in a while. That used to be the bread and butter of this show. Well, why don't we do one today? But if we're gonna do it, let's make it not just any old new wave song. Why don't we do one of the best new wave songs ever made? Today's episode, I Melt With You by Modern English. Fuck yes.
I'll stop the world and melt with you.
I overuse the word classic, I know, but this song is a goddamn classic. I love it more than almost anything. And I don't think that's an uncommon opinion.
This is the best one-hit wonder of the 80s.
You can't quite call I Melt With You timeless because it's so 80s it hurts, but it is without a doubt one of the most achingly romantic songs of all time. Everything about it rules. That perfect chorus, those evocative lyrics.
Making love to you was never second best.
This one song is so immaculate that it's nuts to me that this band never had any more success. Or didn't they? If you've watched this show enough, you know that a lot of famous one-hit wonders had many hits that people just forgot. So with that in mind, I looked through their career and their chart history, and yep, sure enough, Modern English are not actually a one-hit wonder. They're a no-hit wonder.
Dream of better lives.
People have different definitions of what qualifies as a hit single, but most people agree it's got to at least clear the top 40, and I Melt With You didn't even come close, topping out at number 78. Foreign bands usually do better in their own countries, don't they? I mean, they're a bunch of skinny new wavers. They must be British, right? Sound British. Yes, they are. And while in America they only had one song barely scrape onto the pop charts, in the UK, they never charted at all. Like, not even close. The only place they show up on over there is the UK indie charts, and even they're not very high. They were well towered over by the indie giants like New Order and Depeche Mode and Pig Bag. But sometimes chart success isn't how you define a hit. I Melt With You has so thoroughly shot beyond its mediocre chart status that I feel more than comfortable calling them a one-hit wonder. In fact, I'm sure of it, and I'll tell you how you can tell. If you go to a band's Spotify page and more than half of their top 10 songs are the same song, they're a one-hit wonder. Here are all your favorite Modern English songs like I Melt With You, I Melt With You Live, I Melt With You Remix. But you know what? The song is good enough to be repeated that many times. So let's check out the band that stopped the world with their one hit. As I've said over and over, that early burst of new wave pop is what made the 80s the 80s. Before the blockbuster 80s, your Prince and Michael and Madonna, the tone of the decade was set by the new wave acts, who were all art school refugees who liked making weird, eye-catching music videos. And so when MTV took over, the bulk of their playlist was ear candy synth pop, like, Video Killed the Radio Star, I Ran, Don't You Want Me. And this is, of course, where Modern English entered the equation in 1981. So let's check out their first entry into the silly and magical world of synth pop.
You didn't know how much I wanted you. You didn't know.
Actually, we're gonna have to start this story a little further left of the dial. Okay, let me introduce you to a little label called 4AD. It was a minor imprint of a bigger label, and it was founded to be the destination for all the coolest, most top 40 unfriendly alternative bands. It launched in 1980 with a bunch of the big goth rock acts, like Bauhaus, Nick Cave and his original band, The Birthday Party. And they've just continued through the decades being the hottest hotspot of indie shit. They're still doing it now. They've got Bon Iver, Grimes, Deer Hunter, probably a whole bunch of other bands I'm way too basic to know anything about. So yeah, that's the kind of band Modern English were on that first album, Mesh and Lace. And they must like that phrase because it shows up later in their big hit.
Mesh and lace.
But before they ever wrote that, they were one of the original post-punk bands. They were groups who wanted to outdo punk, which I guess they thought had gotten too commercial. Punk rock, selling out since 1979. Even in that scene, I get the sense that Modern English weren't super acclaimed. I think the critical opinion was that they were decent enough Joy Division wannabes, but they weren't that for long. They'd started their career being like, oh, we're dark and goth and we'll never go pop. And on the second album, apparently almost by accident, they looked at what they were recording and they were like, oh, shit. Okay, originally, Modern English was not going to have hits. This was a band destined to never be heard anywhere except the very most hipster of college rock stations. And even on that second album, where they kind of surprised themselves by writing radio-friendly singles, their music was still not even available in America, unless you were one of those pre-internet super nerds who bought import records. So how did these obscure art school Brits become the darling of the 80s? What force of nature was powerful enough to propel them into the mainstream?
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P.
That's right, Nicolas fucking Cage.
It's always awesome.
Okay, so in 1983 there was a little movie called Valley Girl, featuring the first leading role of one Nick Cage in his very brief teen idol phase.
God! What a hunk. Oh, yeah. Check out those pecs.
He actually pulls it off better than you'd imagine. Valley Girl is not quite in the top tier of 80s teen movies, but it's up there. It's pretty well remembered. Personally, I found it a little dull, but the soundtrack is top-notch. Nick Cage's character is supposed to be a punk, and the director, Martha Coolidge, was pretty plugged into the post-punk scene, so she just filled up the movie with bands she liked. Apparently, she heard I Melt With You on K-Rock once, because K-Rock used to be pretty cool and underground, and not just play old Sublime songs from dawn to dusk. And she loved I Melt With You so much that she made the movie's big falling in love montage set to this song.
I'll stop the world and melt with you.
And it just played the entire goddamn song from start to finish, and it absolutely kills. During this 3-minute stretch, Valley Girl and baby Nick Cage are the most romantic couple in cinematic history. So what is it about the song that works so well? Let's take a listen. Okay, well, first off, it has the NBC jingle, obviously. That must be why I like it so much. It gives me fond memories of must-see TV. Actually, I've loved this song so long that I've never really thought about what makes it work and why it's lasted as long as it has. I guess the first thing I'd point out is just the construction of it.
Moving forward, using all my breath.
It's very simple, and for lack of a better explanation, extremely coverable. It's not even a pop song chord song. It's actually much simpler than that. 2 chords only, plus a couple extra chords in the bridge at the end. But for the vast majority of the song, it's just these 2. Play the C chord and the F chords next. Then you play the C again and right back down to F. And it also doesn't have a very wide vocal range, so it's really easy to sing.
I'll stop the world and melt with you.
It's one of those rare songs that sounds just as good being played by a single guy with a guitar. So if you've worn out Wonderwall and you want to learn a second song, highly recommended. But what else is going on? What's it about?
Making love to you was never second best.
Just a love song, right? Not quite. It is a love song. But it's also about something else. The end of the fucking world. It's crazy to think about, but even now, during the great pandemic of 2020, we still don't really have the crazy pallor of apocalyptic dread that people had in the 80s. And they weren't even locked in their homes like we are now. Everyone was off living their lives like normal, but at any second, someone in Washington or Moscow could get real angry, or maybe even just spill their coffee on the nuclear launch console, and literally everyone on Earth would be dead. It's the kind of thing that's hard to put out of your mind. So there were a lot of songs about this, some explicitly, some more indirectly, like I Melt With You. But to be clear, that title is not a metaphor.
I'll stop the world and melt with you.
Lead singer Robbie Gray has stated on the record, this is about two people making love while being vaporized by a nuclear bomb. So he is literally melting with you.
I'll stop the world and melt with you. You've seen.
Huh. Talk about going out with a bang. For what it's worth, I only found one source that quoted him saying that. He doesn't seem to have brought it up in any other interview. So either A, this book is lying, or B, he wasn't actually being serious, or C, he decided he should just keep it under his hat and not ruin people's fond feelings by associating it with human extinction. I tend to think it's that last one. Because yeah, it's probably not about anything that concrete or specific, but there is definitely a lot of apocalyptic imagery in it.
I saw the world crashing all around your face.
I honestly thought for a while that this song was about saving the world. With love.
You've seen the difference and it's getting better all the time.
You stop the world and things are getting better all the time. The future's open wide.
The future's open wide.
Maybe that part is just being ironic, I don't know. Maybe humanity is done for.
I made a pilgrimage to save this human's race, never comprehending the race had long gone by.
Yeah, I think the message of the song is, you know, fuck it. Fuck the world. Fuck the doomed human race. All that matters now is you. And the future's open wide, now that we don't have to worry about literally anything else. I mean, that's romantic, right? I say it is. When you're in love, especially teenage love like in Valley Girl, every little thing is the end of the world. That's why people like this song, for its intensity. I Melt With You feels like a conclusion for sure. It's a song for the end credits. And yes, it does play again over Valley Girl's end credits in many movies since.
There's nothing you and I won't do.
It sounds like I'm making fun of this, I'm not. It's a brilliant idea for a song, and they sell it. It's poetry. And if the world had stopped for them there, that would have been a fine legacy. But they had to keep moving forward, using all their breath, so what happened next? I've done a few of these episodes where I find out the artist complained, like, oh, the label didn't support us. But modern English has a pretty good case for being screwed over. This is their follow-up single, Someone's Calling. It's fine. Kind of midway between I Melt With You and the first album, so, you know, like a decent echo in the Bunnyman B-side. I don't know if it's a hit exactly, but I do know that if I Melt With You had been a hit, maybe they'd have more momentum. But as previously stated, it was not. Here's why. Valley Girl is an okay movie, but it has one of the greatest soundtracks of the entire 80s. People didn't know that at the time, because the soundtrack didn't make it to stores. It was gonna be released, and then the people in charge were like, it's too expensive, and it got pulled at the last minute. And it didn't get a real release until the 90s. That's also why there's no clips of the movie in the music video. By this point, labels had figured out that tying the music video to the movie was a great promotional tool, but no one bothered to do that for modern English. This should have gone straight to #1. It was a giant smash on MTV, so selling it should have been a slam dunk, and the label just dropped the ball. People at Warner Bros. Records got fired over this. And over in London, the people at 4AD were like, we're never working with these big American labels again. These people are tasteless morons. But by the third record, modern English were kind of not fitting onto the 4AD roster anyway. The big names at 4AD at this point were, you know, This Mortal Coil, Dead Can Dance. Meanwhile, this is the direction modern English were headed. 4AD were still the cool goth label, and modern English were turning into just another mainstream synth band. You used to be cool, man! Modern English made one more album with 4AD, didn't go anywhere, and then that was it for them. Modern English jumped to a bigger, more mainstream label after that, and they went full pop. This is their 1986 single, Ink and Paper. You know what, I'm kind of used to looking at these bands' back catalog and not really finding anything, but I actually really like this. This could have been a hit. I mean, check this out. Top tier 80s sax solo, cannot recommend enough. But it went nowhere. No chart action for them at all. So the band split up. They reunited in 1990, and they made one more album that actually did chart a single. In fact, it charted at number 76, 2 spots higher than I Melt With You. So even though it's not as well remembered, this is technically their biggest hit. So let's hear the song that was supposedly that tiny bit much better than I Melt With You.
Let's stop the world. Moving forwards, using all my breath.
Let me introduce you to I Melt With You 1990.
I'll stop the world that melts with you.
It's basically exactly the same. I mean, I guess they thought the song deserved a second chance, and it did 2 spots better. And that's mostly it for them. After that, they kind of exit the public eye. The most I can find is a truly random appearance on the Clueless TV show.
Getting better all the time.
Yes, there was a Clueless TV show. In the meantime, I Melt With You has recurred over and over again. There are covers of it in multiple teen movies, plus dozens of other covers, a Burger King commercial, other commercials, a remake of Valley Girl that went to streaming a couple months ago, a bizarre video from 2004 featuring a lip-syncing Fred Durst.
There's nothing you and I won't do.
I don't even know.
I'll stop the world and melt with you.
Robbie even recorded a spare, stripped-down version in 2011 for a movie also named I Melt With You. And if I were to rank all the movies I'd ever seen, this movie would be in the bottom 50. It is unwatchable. Robbie Gray has broken up the band and reformed it with different members several times. More recently, he managed to convince almost the entire original lineup to rejoin, and they've been touring these past couple of years. They have a small but surprisingly loyal fan base from way back at that first album. Here's them a couple of weeks ago performing I Melt With You in quarantine.
I'll stop the world and melt with you.
Cool. Yes. Not like a big yes, but yes.
I'll stop the world and
I Melt With You is an all-time great 80s song by any measure. Modern English, the band, weren't exactly at the level of The Cure or anything, but they're worth checking out if you like that kind of 80s sound. AllMusic has a good point that they were originally tagged as kind of Joy Division wannabes, but Joy Division lost their lead singer and became New Order, which became a really great pop band. Modern English became New Order before New Order did, so arguably they were ahead of their time. And certainly the long shelf life of I Melt With You bears that out. A perfect song.
let's stop the world. I'll stop the world.